Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Shai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dhamma Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Yuga Dharma Hari Nam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. Priyatmardanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Transcendental Krishna Prasadam Distribution Ki Jai. Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. Just want to take a moment to welcome His Grace Bhagavan Narada Prabhu, who's visiting us here from San Antonio. Him and his wife have been preaching there and holding down the fort in so many ways for many, many years. So we're grateful for their association. And he's kindly agreed to give an impromptu class this morning. So we're grateful to have you here in town, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Janavalabha Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Janavalabha Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, Shri Shrimadaka Chanji Ki Jai. So, I was told I could pick a verse probably about 10 minutes ago. So, I just flipped through my notes. I haven't read this verse, but I chose 1:6:32 just because it was on my screen somehow or another. We'll see what happens. Please bear with me. We'll go over the Sanskrit together. Deva datam imam vinam Swara Brahma Vibhushidam Marchatyatva Harikatam Gayamanas Mayaham Devadattam Imam Vinam Swara Brahma Vibhushidam Marchatyatva Harikatam Gayamanas Yaham. Would anybody like to? Devadattam Imam Vinam Swara Brahma Vibhushitam Marchatyatva Harikatam Gayamanas Charam. Vibhushitam Marchatyatva Harikatam Gayamanas Devadattam Imam Vinam Swara Brahma Vibhushitam Marchatyatva Harikatam Gayamanas Charamyam. Go through the synonyms. Deva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Datam, gifted by. Imam, this. Vinam, a musical stringed instrument. Swara, singing meter. Brahma, transcendental. Vibhushitam, decorated with. Marchatyatva, vibrating. Harikatam, transcendental message. Gaya mana, singing constantly. Charami, do move. Aham, I. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Translation, and thus I traveled constantly singing the transcendental message of the glories of the Lord, vibrating this instrument called a veena, which is charged with the transcendental sound and which was given to me by Lord Krishna. Purport. The musical stringed instrument called the veena, which was handed to Narada by Lord Sri Krishna, is described in the Linga Purana, and this is confirmed by Srila Jiva Goswami. This transcendental instrument is identical with Lord Sri Krishna and Narada because all of them are of the same transcendental category. Sound vibrated by the instrument cannot be material, and therefore the glories and pastimes which are broadcast by the instrument of Narada are also transcendental, without a tinge of material inebriety. The 7 singing meters, namely Sa, Sajja, Ara, Rishabha, Ga, Gandhara, Ma, Majam, Pa, Panchama, Da, Daivata, and Ni, Nishada, are also transcendental and specifically meant for transcendental songs. As a pure devotee of the Lord, Sri Narada Dev is always fulfilling his obligation to the Lord for his gift of the instrument, and thus he is always engaged in singing his transcendental glories, and is therefore infallible in his exalted position. Following in the footsteps of Srila Narada Muni, a self-realized soul in the material world should also properly use the sound meters, namely Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, etc., in the service of the Lord by constantly singing the glories of the Lord as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Again is Deva dattam imam vinam swara brahma vibhushitam marchayitva harikattam gayamanas yaham. And thus I travel constantly singing the transcendental message of the glories of the Lord, vibrating this instrument called a veena, which is charged with transcendental sound and which was given to me by Lord Krishna. Multiple verses? Sure, I may take that option. Cool. And what time do we speak until? 8:30, okay. So I'm used to having like some sort of dialogue while we're giving talks. I appreciate the opportunity. Again, it was kind of impromptu, but seems like Radha Kalachandji has some spontaneity in my life, which is the common theme over the past 16 years. It's amazing. I was driving here from San Antonio. I'm looking to speak with a few people. It was kind of another spontaneous trip, but I was listening to Chaitanya Bhagavat. And I was listening to this pastime of Jagai and Madai. We all know this famous pastime. And then, of course, spreading the sounds and glories of Krishna is not easy. When I was initiated, my Guru Maharaj gave me this name, Bhagavan Narada, and he said that Narada Muni is a great sage, and he's a teacher to both the kings and demons alike. So he doesn't have this kind of mundane discrimination the way we do. And you see it when Narada Muni gives some sort of instruction, or even if it's a curse, right? It's done for the benefit of the living entity, where as opposed, when we discriminate, we usually have some particular motive at times. Does this person fit my box? Do they fit my standard? Maybe I can preach to them, or maybe I can talk to them, or maybe I shouldn't talk to them. So I was listening to this pastime of Jagai and Madai. I just love Chaitanya Bhagavat, and I forget the name of this devotee. He did a really good audio narration of it. But it was interesting to hear that the townspeople were warning Lord Nityananda, and they were warning Haridas Thakur to not go and speak to Jagai and Madai. And even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was saying, I would chop them into pieces. And he says, well, how can we give them your mercy, you know? So even with these warnings coming directly from the Lord in one sense, Lord Nityananda's imperceivable mercy and his compassion towards the fallen, conditioned souls was the reason why he took this supposed risk to go and to help these two personalities. Not only at that, another detail that I was picking up that we often overlook is that this particular Jagai and Madai, sometimes we compare ourselves to Jagai and Madai, but most of us weren't even born in Brahmin families. They were fallen Brahmanas. I thought, wow, still to have this heaviness in their hearts, even after being born in particular families. It's interesting. And it goes, you know, I'm reading a lot in the first canto. Prabhupada, I had these realizations over the past 2 months, rereading Bhagavatam. Prabhupada's writing towards the Western audience. This is one thing he did as an acharya that hadn't been done before. He came over here and he wrote in this language of the Malechas to deliver this message to us. And he stresses that it's not dependent upon the qualities that one has, but rather their intention to serve Krishna properly. So following in Narada Muni's footsteps, which we try to do, is spread the glories of Krishna consciousness. About 2 weeks ago, we were in San Antonio. I've been there for 16 years, and it's a trip. You go through all these different waves. When you kind of just stay in one spot, which is kind of opposite of Narada Muni's, particular path. But when you stay in one spot, you see these waves come and go, and you weather many, many storms. Even now, currently, we're weathering one storm, but we'll see what Krishna has in store for that. We were in this parade. It's 850,000 people. It's probably the largest Harinam in the West. And then there was 1.5 million people watching on TV. And we have a small team, and it's very difficult. You know, the whole thing is just berserk. So we were only able to decorate so much the night before, just 2 or 3 of us. And then the wind came, and it just blew everything away. And then the rain came, and it started pouring. And then I was with my good friend, Bhakta Brady. And I said, okay, so the next morning we went to rig up the truck, and he goes, oh, I forget, I don't have the brake lights for this truck. I said, Brady, I told you 6 months ago. So I said, I think we're going to need brake lights for this festival. Again, I'll get back into Bhagavatam, but this is just an example given. Long story short, we pull up to the scene. Everything's torn apart. I'm freaking out. We get out of the truck. The lead organizer of the festival comes and crashes the golf cart into our truck. And it's just like, Krishna, why is this happening? This is ridiculous. You know, here I am trying to do all this service, and we're trying to go out. The mind and the ego just kind of takes over. And it's never easy when you try to go out and you spread the names of Krishna, or you try to do service. So we're there, we're freaking out. Little time passes, we get everything settled, and then the devotees come together and they just start putting together this parade float. We just had bare wood on our float. Everybody was ready to go, and they were just looking at us. So much anxiety for about 8 or 9 hours in the heat putting this thing together. So finally we get to a point where we're ready to spread the Harinam into the crowd. And we turn that corner, and it's just oceans and oceans and oceans of people for the next 3 hours. Then the news comes up, and they give us about a 2-minute presentation. They're just glorifying, oh, they look so peaceful. They look so amazing. They take a nice shot of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. And then the Maha Mantra is just coming out clearly on TV. So I said, wow, that's another 1.5 million. And we get through the whole thing, and it's like Krishna gives you this protection. He puts you in this bubble of security. You know, you're so wiped out, you're so tired, you're frustrated, you're in anxiety, you go through these waves of emotions, and Krishna's just giving you this drama. And finally, when we're wrapping up and the parade comes to an end, you're just in this bubble of ecstasy, and it just turns off, and you're blasted back into the material world. And you look around, and you see drunk people running this way, people fighting that way, lowriders cruising by with loud music over here, horns honking, people cursing, people yelling, and you go, okay, I'm back in the material world. Here you go. And I looked at one of our friends, Omkar, who's been with us the past 6 months, military guy. He's just getting shipped off today to Virginia. Best of luck to him. I looked at him, I said, can you feel the difference? We're surrounded by 850,000 people. It's not the most peaceful scene. It's pretty yucky at 11 o'clock at night. But then you turn around, and as soon as the bubble of the kirtan stops, you're zapped right back in to the material world. And I said, what more of an example do I need? Like, then 1 or 2 days later, my mind goes back to being in these modes of difficulty. And it's like, snap out of it. Go right back into chanting. Go right back into your service. And meditate on what Krishna is giving you. Don't be a fool. You know, don't be so easily persuaded by the material energy. One word I like to say with the material energy is that it's very abusive. Doesn't discriminate. Doesn't discriminate. Again, following in the footsteps of Narada Muni, always being engaged in spreading the glories of Krishna through his transcendental sound and Veena. There's one family that was going to our programs. I've been there for some time, trying to move along, and I can feel Krishna purifying us. Often we think that when we do these sorts of services, Krishna is going to bless us with some sort of opportunity. Krishna is going to help us with this or get us that. But he gives you the realization, the Dhammi Buddhi Yogamtam, with real intelligence. Krishna gives us intelligence. So he blesses us with this realization that we can get to continue on with our spiritual life. So it was like these tons of realizations started happening in the next couple of weeks, where I could just feel my heart changing. That was one thing that Parameshwara Prabhu, recently he came by San Antonio and we were doing some book distribution. He says, we're in the heart-changing game. How many hearts are we changing? No paparazzi, just kidding. We're in the heart-changing game. How many hearts are we changing? It stuck with me. And I could feel my own heart changing after this yajna, thinking about how much more humble I need to become and how far away from it I am. So anyways, back to the material energy, not discriminating on anybody. There was this family that used to come to our programs. It was a really nice family, but a little overwhelming at times. They had 8 kids, and it was like a tornado, you know. They come in the house, and we had our little program there, and they, you know, and you could see that they weren't so well off. But we tried with what we could, my wife and I, and others, to facilitate. And there was one particular young lady there, young girl. She was about 12 or 13, and she was kind of like the mother of the family. And we got attached to her. And eventually, the family kind of like wandered off after COVID and such. He's such a pure-hearted child, such a pure-hearted kid. And then, you know, fast forward till just this past September, I was out until midnight at this crazy event, just flying for our Rath Yatra in the middle. I just stand in the middle of this crowd, and it's just like thousands of people, you know, walking by, and I'm flying. And then I hear Narada, and I turn around, and it's the young girl from 6 years previous. She's grown up. She's about 16, 17. She's got face piercings. You know, she's got colored hair. She has half of her body hanging out. And she looks intoxicated. I said, wow, this girl's not even maybe 16, 17 years old. And I just froze. She came up and embraced me, and I embraced her. And then all of a sudden, there was this ocean of people. And I got pulled one way by two people, because sometimes people see me and they, oh, hey, how you doing? And I had another person pull me the other way. And I see this child just sort of just floating off into the abyss. And I couldn't do anything. I felt just numb, and I felt stuck, and I felt broken. And she kind of floated off into the darkness, and I got pulled over here, and I had these people talking to me that I haven't seen in 4 or 5 years or whatever. And then when it was done, I was trying to find this person, and she was gone. And I was thinking, Krishna, why'd you let that happen? And I thought, I said, the material energy does not discriminate, doesn't care. No matter how much I care, I was walking around everywhere trying to find this kid. Couldn't find her. And I looked her up online. Sure enough, she has a 40 here. She has a blunt in her hand. She's smoking. She's, just completely out of it. 16 years old. I'm just thinking they have to go through this. The living entity has to go through this. And a lot of times we think that if we do something big for Krishna, he'll be happy. I've been thinking for years and years and years, we have to have this big program. There has to be like 200 people coming. And there has to be like this whole illumination around everything we're doing, and Krishna will be happy. Will be happy. But Krishna's happy just seeing us engaged in his service with as much attention and intention as we can possibly give. That's been one of my latest revelations and realizations, that all this is going to be wiped out at the end of Kali Yuga. So therefore, we have to try to get along with one another as possible. But again, we have to be as Krishna conscious as we possibly can, as Prabhupada stated so many times in his literature. It's heavy, the Sankirtan movement's no joke. And we have to be careful not to step on each other's toes out of false ego or some ulterior motive that's on the bodily conception. We have to at least respect one another and work within certain boundaries or parameters for the benefit of all living entities, and not just our own self-motivation. And that can be tricky, because we have certain ways that we want to serve Krishna. We have certain desires. We have certain things we're good at. And sometimes it's better just to take a back seat and allow others to blossom and go forward. So here we are, San Antonio. We're trying to move along as much as we can. We have a little college club. Another Sankirtan story, I was distributing books on campus. Since we're on this theme of Narada Muni spreading Krishna's glories. And there was this big, big ruckus in the middle of the college. And I thought, what was that? And then I heard that there's a famous movie star. He was doing some documentary on the college campus. And I was thinking, oh man, I should go. He's famous, It's John Leguizamo. John Leguizamo? He was in the Mario movie, whatever. But I was thinking, automatically you think, big famous guy, he has a lot of pull, he has a lot of influence. Go distribute him a Bhagavad Gita, right? And I was thinking, I could go walk around and I might not find him, but then I'm going to leave the book table here alone, and I'll just stick here. And so all of a sudden, I just decided to stay at the book table. And I had one young lady run up to the book table, and she threw her backpack on the ground, and she pulled her bag, a book out of the bag, and she was like, I'm so grateful that you're here. And she showed me the book, and it was The Science of Self-Realization. And she said, this book changed my life. And she couldn't have been more than 17 or 18 years old. And she opens up the book, and then it has a handwritten note. The book was totally beat up, and it has a handwritten note from her friend who's her age. It said, this book changed my life, and I hope it does the same for you. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. And she was just there breaking down and opening up and revealing, I said, this is intense. And I thought, and then she took some other books, and I thought, here it is that you have this 17, 18-year-old girl who's more qualified than this man over here who's worth $50 million. So due to her sincerity, and who would I have been to go out and run around and look for this rich, famous celebrity guy that's loaded with cash, right? But totally not, for some reason or another, he's not getting the mercy. And I said, if I would have left my table, I wouldn't have had that exchange with this person. It was a deep reflection, thinking that, wow, we're not dependent upon our externalities. It's all about the sincerity that we're offering to Krishna. Another time I was distributing books. I was doing door-to-door, which I find kind of the most fulfilling. This is a really good one. And it shows you the protection, too. I was knocking. I like going door-to-door because it's just so paced. It's so calm. It's very protective and shielded, right? Like if you're in the streets, somebody can just say, whatever, I'm good. You ever hear that? I'm good. How are you? I'm good. I'm good. So easy to do that in the streets. I used to do a lot of business to business too before my service kind of picked up. So I'd go business to business and kind of just put all the books by the book register. I'd lay them all down and then I'd give my spiel because I think, well, they're not going to yell or cuss at me. They work here or whatever. But then I started doing door to door and I just felt like it was such the mood, right? It's such the mood of Lord Nityananda and Haridas Thakur, just going door to door and sharing. So I go door to door, and my only prayer was like, Krishna, just don't let me get bit by a dog. You know, however this happens, that's cool. One time I had this German shepherd just come up to my face, and I was on the stairway, and we were like eye to eye, but he was blind. He had like these crazy eyes, and I was just like, oh my God. So you get those things sometimes. In the mood of Sankirtan, you always get these obstacles. You get this fear. I mean, whether it be book distribution or cooking in the kitchen, there's always a little bit of anxiety, right? So I was there, and I knocked on the door, and this guy came out with a hammer. And I thought, oh, my God. And I had knocked on the door behind me, and it was one young guy, and he was looking through the crack of the door. So they were kind of like, I was in the middle between these two apartments. And so the guy comes out with a hammer, and he's like, what do you want? And I was just kind of frozen. And then his wife came out, and she just started cussing at me. I had my dhoti and my tilak. I was all, devoted out, I guess you want to say. So it was early in the morning. The guy had a hammer, and the woman just started screaming these vulgarities. Like, I didn't even say anything. F word, this word, that word, whatever. And he said, what do you want? And he had this hammer. He pulled it off the shelf. And I was actually in bliss. I said, oh, wow, I'll get to die on Sankirtan. This is awesome. Like, just kill me now. Let's do it, I don't know how that would feel with a hammer going against the head, but I just thought, like, I'm so protected. Like, this is the best way to die. So I wasn't feeling so fearful, but the guy came out and goes, what do you want? I said, I have a Krishna book. And he goes, Krishna? And I said, yes, Krishna. And he goes, I love Krishna. And then he puts the hammer back on the table, and he looks at his wife. He's like, go inside, kid. And then he just kind of pushes her back, and she's just chirping and chirping and chirping. And then he shuts the door, and you can hear her from the other side of the door. He's like, what do you want for the Krishna book? And I said, I don't know, a donation. And then he gave me $20 out of his wallet, took the Krishna book. The guy behind's watching all of this, and then he shuts the door. And I was like, whoa, here's a story I can tell one day, and here I am telling it. But the point is that either way, whether he takes the donation or he slams me over the head with a hammer, I feel blessed. And I was a little disappointed too, because I was thinking, whoa, that could have been my time. Of course, I don't want to go by a hammer, but point is whether you're doing that or whether you're simply gardening for Krishna, there's going to be some sort of insects that come into your vegetables, or there's going to be some time where you're not able to water your plants and seeds properly, and you have to maintain some sort of consistency and loyalty to Prabhupada's movement. So, of course, the gauge is the spiritual master. The gauge is the spiritual master, following the spiritual master's footsteps, taking those instructions into your heart. You see that with Narada Muni and Vyasadeva. Srila Vyasadeva is confused. What's going on here? I feel like there's something here that I'm leaving out. And then who comes into the picture? Narada Muni. You see the same example with Prahlad Maharaj. While in the womb, listening attentively to Srila Narada Muni. So likewise, we have the spiritual master's instructions, and we have to take those instructions into our hearts. It's our saving grace, it's our protection, it's our gauge, it's our guide, it's everything, it's all we have. Sometimes the spiritual master's instructions can come in the form of chastisement, can come in the form of just straightforward boldness. It can be just a glance. You ever had the glance, the side eye, and it's just like, oh, my whole everything just breaks and shatters when I've thought about those times, you know? I was reminiscing one time when I was with my spiritual master here in Dallas, and we were on the Rath Yatra through the neighborhood, and I misplaced his water bottle while we were on the procession, and he just gave me a side eye and a glance, and he took his bag from off my shoulder and he put it back on his shoulder. My Guru Maharaj is very sweet and gentle, but it was enough to just shatter me. And I remember running into the men's ashram and just laying there and going like, I'm not qualified. I can't do this, you know? I'm so stupid. I'm so ridiculous. And I just felt so embarrassed. And then I spoke with him a little later. He called for me and he says, look, I need your help. I need your assistance. Don't run off like that. And he could tell, of course. But I just thought that's all I'm trying to do is assist. And with that, over the years I've learned especially, it's good to offer to the spiritual master before he asks, to understand his mood, to understand his heart as much as we can, as much as possible. So therefore there aren't these sort of mishaps. And at the end of the day, if you make some mistake, then you correct it, right? So understanding the spiritual master's instructions, not just whimsically trying to spread Krishna's glories, which is nice, but according to what our spiritual master recommends, according to the way that he perceives would be best for our spiritual growth. That's the lineage, the parampara system that we have to maintain going into the future, because it's very, very, I guess you could say, fragile in one sense, that we can all get caught up in serving according to our own limited realizations. So I wanted to share a few thoughts. Maybe we can open it up if there's any comments or questions. I did my best with a few minutes of preparation. Please forgive me, correct me.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for sharing that transcendental nectar. I must say you're empowered and all goes to your service. I remember 25 years ago when I tried a bit, distributing books door to door back in Mumbai in India. It was a very humbling experience. As you shared the dog experience, me too, I had a similar experience. Anyways, but I also encountered many times people of other faith challenging us, and ridiculing us, criticizing us. So I would like to hear some, if you have any such encounters about the evangelists or the Muslims.
For me, my lifeline is, of course, my practice. Prabhupada said in one purport that, don't quote me, but more or less, having our practice, praying to Krishna, and getting the blessings of the Vaishnavas. So for me, let them talk. As long as my guru's happy, I could care less. I've already had all that and been through that, and it can really bring you down. It depends. Even devotees can criticize you, right? Like, that's where it stings. But then if you're just sticking to your guru's instructions and you're trying your best without being disrespectful to anybody, then Krishna will guide you and protect you from within. So, yeah, we've had all sorts of people. I think there has to be some sort of sensitivity on our end as well, where we try to make people as comfortable as possible in one sense when preaching to them, Like, I do a lot of city organized events. I've worked a lot with local politicians. I have a big festival in October. And then I have Rath Yatra in September. There's different moods in different ways. But ultimately, I mean, we're not in control of that, right? Like, I can't control the way somebody's perceiving me. I can only try my best to be a friend. And it's up to them, you know? Like, there has to be a certain level of detachment. And there's so many examples of that. I mean, look at Prabhupada as well. I was listening to one, I think Chaitanya Chandra was telling me this past time about a particular devotee that went to Prabhupada and said, please give me blessings so that I can find a bona fide spiritual master. Go to Prabhupada and say that. And from what I remember, Chaitanya Chandra said, Prabhupada said something along the lines of, may you have my blessings to enjoy the material world, something like this. Still, that was said to Prabhupada, right? What to speak of me? I have so many faults. I hope that helps. I did my best. Just follow the spiritual master, read Prabhupada's books, and be as attentive with as much intention as possible to your service. Find something you like to do. Find something you like to, like the program that my wife and I are doing now, we genuinely like what we're doing, and it makes things easier. We're engaged according to the things that just feel natural, right? It's not, certain things are not so natural for us, especially not growing up in the movement. And it takes some time for us to adjust to, or maybe we'll never adjust to these things. But find things that you like doing and do those things for Krishna. And those can also be things that protect us when we're going through difficulties. Hope that helps. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for giving class. I was wondering if you could go, like, scroll through the purport really quick.
Well, I can't do that.
Oh yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, right there. The 7 singing meters, namely Sha, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, Dwa, and Ni. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, which is, like, I know super important, but when I heard this class before, I heard that those singing meters, they correspond to the Do, Re, Mi. You know, does anyone know that one? The Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La. Yeah, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La. And it's like, so it's like exactly like corresponding. And I always thought that was pretty interesting, you know, like the different ways that people can say that. But the other thing that I was relating to when you were mentioning Chaitanya Chandra, I had the super awesome, great fortune of, like, I brought him some prasad from the feast on Saturday, and we got to hang out and honor prasad, and we were watching, following Srila Prabhupada. And something that you said in your lecture also came up during the video in following Srila Prabhupada, that there was one devotee that was coming up to Srila Prabhupada, and he was saying, Prabhupada, there's a famous person here. You know, I think it was at New Vrindavan. There's a famous person here, and he says that the conclusion is that everybody should chant Hare Krishna, right? And then they were like, yeah, we need to go talk to him because he's so famous. And then Prabhupada said, no, we're not going to, this is all paraphrased, by the way, sorry. But Prabhupada said, no, we're not going to talk to him because he's famous. We're going to talk to him because he's achieved the correct conclusion. And so I just wanted to say that I would say that you did, right? The right thing by staying at the book table, right? Because it was just kind of like coincidental. We just saw that in following Srila Prabhupada. So yeah.
Even in our movement, sometimes we can get caught up in the fame game, you know. So-and-so celebrity over here read Bhagavad Gita, and he made a 15-second clip on it for YouTube. And then you look at so-and-so who did that clip, that big famous person, and you actually see the way they live their lives. And it's like, well, why aren't we glorifying this person over here who just walked into the temple and they've been actually taken to the process? Why aren't we showing how great that is just because this person's a celebrity? So that's dangerous too. Those things can happen. You see it in our movement. And we start promoting these false idols, basically, you could call them, these celebrities who are just doing crazy things behind closed doors. You hear about it. You've seen it firsthand. And that's good they took to Bhagavad Gita. Let's see how the process works for them. I actually wanted to go to the next verse real quick, which is 1:633, and I just wanted to share something that's also in line with what I was just speaking. The Supreme Lord Krishna, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear, at once appears on the seat of my heart as if called for, as soon as I begin to chant his holy activities. Purport: the absolute personality of Godhead is not different from his transcendental name, form, pastimes, and the sound vibrations thereof. As soon as a pure devotee engages himself in the pure devotional service of hearing, chanting, and remembering the name, fame, and activities of the Lord, at once he becomes visible to the transcendental eyes of the pure devotee by reflecting himself on the mirror of the heart by spiritual television. Therefore, a pure devotee who is related with the Lord in loving transcendental service can experience the presence of the Lord at every moment. It is a natural psychology in every individual case that a person likes to hear and enjoy his personal glories enumerated by others. That is the natural instinct. And the Lord, being also an individual personality like others, is not an exception to this psychology because he's a person. Because psychological characteristics visible in the individual souls are but reflections of the same psychology in the absolute Lord. The only difference is that the Lord is the greatest personality of all and absolute in all his affairs. If, therefore, the Lord is attracted by the pure devotee's chanting of his glories, there is nothing astonishing. Since he is absolute, he can appear in the picture of his glorification, the two things being identical. Srila Narada chants the glorification of the Lord not for his personal benefit, but because the glorifications are identical with the Lord. Narada Muni penetrates into the presence of the Lord by the transcendental chanting. So again, kirtans, harinams, chanting, it's based upon the purity. Sometimes we can kind of get caught up in the aura of an individual, but it's the purity. You may not have the best singing voice, you may not play the best mridanga, but if the intention's there, that's something. What is this pastime with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, where he saw one of his disciples, I believe, kind of singing very eccentrically, and he allowed somebody else who didn't sing so good externally to lead over the kirtan. That's another point. It's based upon the purity. It's based upon the purity that we have. And Krishna likes to be glorified the way that we do. So it's totally just flipping things around here. That's why it may be good if somebody has some fame or huge amount of fame or a huge amount of wealth. I've met people like this, and I've never taken pictures with them, you know. I just kind of say, who are you? What do you do? I met a very famous basketball player, and they were kind of in their gear. They were hanging around the Alamo, and I knew who they were. They're a very, very famous basketball player. And I said, you know, I gave them some book, but they ended up taking an Ishapanishad, and I just totally played it cool when I said, well, do you play sports or something like this? And it was humbling, and they actually took to it, you know. So sometimes it may be best if somebody with some big stature comes in, you say, hey, we need help washing pots, you know. Of course, you have to play it cool and see where they're really at, but it may not be best all the time that if we see somebody who has this big, famous, wealthy thing to just take a picture next to them when we distribute the book, you know, just treat them like anybody else. It can be refreshing. I've gone through that before. When you meet somebody like that and you just play it cool. So anyways, I guess we can stop here. We have 2 minutes unless anybody wants to share a reflection, correction, a blessing, anything. Feel free. Realizations, chastisements.
Thank you very much for the nice impromptu class. It's so nice to hear. You know, I was just thinking that, you know, you and your wife are out there. This is what Srila Prabhupada wanted us to do. Go out and share Krishna with others. And I pray that you're given all strength and blessings to be able to follow your spiritual master. And I was also appreciating a point. The way I was taking it is that everybody has value in Krishna consciousness. It's not that if someone's wealthy or if somebody's poor that we don't value either of them. They all have something to offer to Krishna, and to appreciate, where they're at, their sincerity, be able to meet them where they're at and try to engage them in whatever way we can. I think that was Srila Prabhupada's example for us, that he met everybody where they were at. The hippies that joined in the early days that then became the leaders of our movement and did so much. Srila Prabhupada met them where they were at, and he cooked and cleaned and did everything for them, and then eventually they gave their hearts to Srila Prabhupada and to Krishna. And so I see you're in your own way, to the best of your capacity, doing that in San Antonio, and grateful that you're coming here to visit, and just praying for you and your wife, for your strength and blessings and your service. And we hope you'll come to Dallas and we can serve you all and support you in your service in some nice way. Thank you, Prabhu, for
Hare
coming
Krishna.
up with a nice class.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Bhagavan Narada Prabhu ki jai. Pancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha.